Hello, Divya here with another episode of Divya's Discoveries. And the topic for this week that I want to explore is conflict. How do we create conflict? How do we create disagreement or disharmony, especially with people that we love? So, if you're human, I'm guessing you have had an argument with someone before. So, in this video, we'll unpack how we can avoid arguing and transform that into a mutual understanding and respect for each other's perspective. So, I'll share with you a story from my life this past week. My partner was out of town on a business trip, and I had a friend in town from Byron Bay and invited him to stay in the second bedroom. Now, I felt slightly anxious about how my partner would respond to that he may use his map, his perspective to view it rather than mine, right? And in my perspective, I open my home to anyone and am quite happy for people to come stay over and sleep in the guest room or on the lounge if they're in town and need somewhere to stay and it's easier for them. And in his perspective, home is much more of a private place and a sanctuary. So with my previous partner, we hosted couch surfers, travelers from all over the world, and in our first year in Sydney, I think we probably had about 2 weeks where we didn't have someone staying with us. Other than that, we always had people with us, and we're quite happy to do that. Though my current partner doesn't share that same perspective on home. And so my fear was that he would use his perspective to understand my behavior rather than my perspective, and that he might make meaning out of it where there really wasn't any, and therefore suffer himself unnecessarily. Now, you probably know by now that we create our fears, and to some extent, I will say I did that for myself, and he picked up on my nervousness in telling him and made meaning out of it, thought it was something beyond what it actually was in my perspective, and told himself stories that suffered him unnecessarily. I held steady and centered until he returned to the truth of his knowing, which was that I love him dearly and that have no interest in anyone else, and if I'm inviting anyone to sleep over, it's because there's no ulterior motive other than to facilitate ease for someone else, and I'm quite happy to open my home. And so when he saw it from my perspective, when he used my map to understand my behavior instead of his, see, this is the key to conflict resolution, is understanding that no two people create reality the same way. In NLP, we say the map is not the territory. So the territory is the world, right? The external world. The map is the way we each perceive it, our own filters and how we create reality for ourselves. We each have our unique way of doing that. And to use our map to try to understand someone's behavior rather than to seek to understand their map is one of the ways, well, I would say the way that we create conflict, right? And so imagine how funny people would look if everyone wore the same size clothes. Imagine if someone the size of Tony Robbins, for instance, who's a very large man, was wearing your size clothes. It'd look a bit funny, especially if you were wearing his. And the same is true for reality. The behaviors we each have are byproducts of how we understand the world. So if we're seeking to understand someone's behavior, I mean, inevitably, people will do things that under our map sometimes we think is crazy, totally crazy, and we can't understand it through our own lens. And it's not until we take the time to shift into their perspective and say, how is it that they create reality? What's important to them? Let me look through their eyes. Let me seek to see from their perspective and adopt their map. And when we do that in that space, conflict simply can't exist. I mean, there may be times where people don't agree on things, but it's never a argument. It's just a, yeah, I see it this way, you see it that way. Okay, tomato, tomato, basil, basil. So the lesson here is to consider, where are those times where you feel yourself agitated, angry, or annoyed with someone, or have a situation where you experience conflict, and how can you even more deliberately seek to see their perspective and to clearly communicate yours. Reflect and let me know what you come up with in the comments below.